Hi, it's David from Electric Teaching, and I'm going with part 4 of my graphing with integrals and calculating the area between curves or curves and x-axis. Right now we've got the program working so that it asks us for doing the integrals and sets up the arrays. So let me just punch in an x value here, and it sets up the arrays when I hit integral for inputting the minimum x and the maximum x. And these arrays are then converted into strings, which now I'm going to convert into values. And I'm going to graph red lines between the curve and the x-axis, or between right now the y equal x line, or the function, and the x-axis. So let's do that. So, excuse me. I'm going to come all the way down to where I'm in my integrate. Here's my integration function, and I'm passing to it graphs EQ1 and 2 and K there. And now what we want to do is upon hitting A, we've already written the text for the instruction for this, so you select A. We're going to select A and we're going to send it to another function that'll calculate the area. So right where I have the elif or else if return value, I'm going to copy that actually, hit return, and paste that in to be now when I hit the A key. Now when I hit the A key, excuse me, K underscore A, it's going to run a new function called area. And what I need to pass to it is how many graphs, so I know where to draw the lines and stuff between equations or from equation to axis. EQ, EQ2, and the K, and I need to pass the X min display and the X max display variables. And those values are right now strings, and so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert those. And if you know your calculus, then I'm going to go B minus A um, to get the delta x down the road, and when we actually are doing the calculating the area. So right now let's make it so that we can do the graphs. Right now I want to graph or shade the area between the curves here. So I'm going to take this function, since I've just made it, I'm going to copy it, come down, make a new one, def, define a new function. Excuse me, I always want to put a little comment on this. This is graphing and calculating. Well, let's just say graphing the area between curve. Um, we'll just leave it like that. That's good enough because technically it's between the x-axis and the curve on the first one. So let's do define, paste in that new function you just made, put a colon, hit return. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm running a little bit of a cold here. And let's see, define area. The first thing we want to do is we want to take the X-Men display and make a new assignment to it. I'm going to call it, just to shorten it here, X-Men val is equal to the float of the X-Men display. First thing I need to do. Now I need to go X max val is equal to the float of the X max display variable. What we're doing is we're taking strings. The computer only sees it as string values, doesn't know what else to do with it, and doesn't know it's a number until I put the float command on it. Now it'll make it a number. Let's do if, we're going to do an if statement, if graphs double equal, so if the graphs are equal to 1, meaning we're going to run just between the equation and the x-axis, then what we need to do is we need to make the next y value always equal to 0. I could technically just, when I create my position from graphing a line from point to point, that's how Python and Pygame graph lines, is they just graph a line from point to point with a color and a thickness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this n equals 0 command to help me do that. Let's see, what else? Um, oh yeah, let's do a little loop. The exact same way that I ran the exact same way I ran a the graphing command in the other video sequence of graphing every curve by just drawing a line from point to point. That's basically what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do for I in the range of parentheses, and I'm going to use a new variable that I forgot to assign, so let me type it in first. Delta x. Delta x in calculus means basically the change of x between all of the lines or rectangles or trapezoids that you're doing when you're summing up the area under a curve. So let me, before I finish this, come back up and let's make the delta x. It's actually going to be need to made up here. Delta x is going to be equal to my x max value, just like in x max value, just like in calculus, minus the x min value. So this is the b minus a in almost every calc book. Usually we divide by the number of rectangles that we're trying to make, divide by n in calculus. I'm actually going to just make sure that I have, I'm going to use k. So if k is working at 15 pixels per grid line, it seems like a perfect number to use. So if I want to shade between like 2 and 0, and k is 15, that's going to shade 30 lines if I go times k. So that's what I think I want to do. I want to use the delta x to be a multiple of k from a to b, or b to a, however you want to see that, and use that formula that way. So for I in the range of delta x, let's make an x value. The x value will be our, also called our next x, or our nx, because if we draw a line, a vertical line is one x coordinate from another x coordinate. Oops, I'm trying to click and show you things mathematically. But if you think of a grid, it's one x coordinate to another x. That's a vertical line. So x is the same as next x, and it's going to start at x min value. X min val, which is the numerical float, the float of the display value. So if we're starting at 1, this first value is at 1. It's going to increment by k because delta x is incrementing by k. So it's basically going to go so many pixels over every time. Let's see, did that. Now the y value, it's the same. It's one of the y values is equal to the top or the bottom, wherever the equation is. So we do the eval of EQ, the variable EQ. Now I need to create a position variable, pos1, equal parentheses. The way we designed our grid is that width divided by 2 is origin in the x coordinate. And then I'm going to add the x value, that's the x value, times k, so that it lines it right up with the graph at the exact starting value there, because x is at the min value. And then we're going to go comma, and the height of it, this is the y coordinate, so it is the height, and we're using the height divided by 2. Height divided by 2 again is the origin, so it's dead center vertically. And then what we need to do is we need to go opposite. Remember, Python is opposite, so I'm going to go in the vertical. So down is positive and up is negative. So in that sense, kind of like your mathematics, I'm going to go y with an opposite of y times k for the exact same reasoning. There's my pos1. Pos2 is almost identical. In fact, I'm just going to copy pos1 here. I'm going to paste in, make pos2, that's position 2. It's the same idea, except we're using the next x value. Well, the next x value is still the same as the x value. So in theory, I could just leave this x since it's always the same. But I like to make this more, thinking of this as a math lesson as well. So I'm using the variables. Also lets me manipulate things later a little bit differently if I so choose. Same idea, ny is 0 on every one of these. So I could just put 0 times k, or just minus nothing, or just get rid of it all. But I like to use the idea that I'm using from one value to the next with nx and ny and x and y. I think the lesson there is valuable. Please, if you're writing slick code, clean it up, make it less lines are better here. Let's see. Now we just need to draw the line. Pygame dot draw dot line parentheses screen. Okay, we have to draw to something in a color from one position. This is how Pygame lines work. To another position, pos2, Okay, and the thickness. I'm going to make it a thickness of 1. I think it'll work fine. Let me see. Yep, looks good. So that's basically it. There's technically going to be an else here for the else for the graph over here, graphs equal 1. But right now I just want to leave it as is to see if this is going to work. And I'm going to draw a bunch of lines between a curve and the x-axis. So let's try it. F5. Hit OK. Oh, syntax error right off the bat. Didn't like the word range here. Let me see what's going on. So for I in range. Oops, forgot that part. Good thing to watch and learn from other people's mistakes so you don't make the same mistakes. Let's see if I get the graph working. Hang on a second. It just closed it. So let me just double click it, open it up one more time here, and do an F5. Sorry about that. Okay, seems to be running. Let's do X. Let's do I now. I should take me into the integration function. I'm going to go from 1 and I'm going to hit enter. It's going to ask for the x max value now. I'm going to hit 3. And if I hit A, it should do the define area. And we got an error. Global name. I got a global name. Let me check this out. Well, I found a couple of my errors. They were just some spelling errors. I spelled delta wrong there, and I had a capital X there. And when I ran it, I want to show you what I did wrong because I think it's interesting to learn what happened. Let's do X, and I'm going to do I, and I'm going to run it from, oh, let's see, 1 to 2 and hit A, and it drew one line. It only drew one line. I thought that was interesting. And if you look, I'll show you why it did it. Let me get back to the code. I ran this loop, and I is incrementing from 0 to however many delta x is, technically delta x minus 1. Um, so what's going on is I forgot to use the I to increment the x value. So what I need to do is, since we're always taking the x min value and reassigning it to x back at the top of the loop, I want to increment this x min value here. And that's the thing I forgot to do, and that should make it work for this part of the video sequence here, video lessons. So x min value will be equal to, we're going to increment the smallest value basically, to increment it from itself plus 1, and then we're going to take the 1 and we're going to divide it by the float of k, the float of k. So I want to be sure I want this to be able to move in small little values, small little decimal values. And if I just divide by k, it won't work. So if x min val, okay, is, like I said, started at 1, then I want it to, when it goes through, I want it to go to 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, however many decimals I need to get through k divisions of it between the units. So I hope that makes sense. If simply speaking, if k is 10, then this is going to increment through 1.1, 1.2, all the way to 1.9, and then 2. 10 divisions of it. So let's see if this works. Run it. Hopefully I don't get an error. Oh, I got an error. Sorry about that. Hang on, just real quick. Run it because I think I've got to the point I'm done. If you just double click on any Python program, it'll just run. So let's go from 1 to 2 and hit A. And perfect. It has shaded in perfectly from the equation down to the x-axis from 1 to 2. The only thing I have available to do right now is Q. So if I hit Q, it should restart over. And again, I could do something else like x squared. Oops, excuse me. Let me clear that out. X squared plus 1, and integrate this one from maybe -2 to 1.3 just to see how it looks with negatives and decimals. Hit A, and it looks like it did go to about a third over from 1, and it started at -2. Things seem to be working nicely. On the next video part, I think we'll be able to add in the calculation of the area and display the area right here. We also need to be able to work two equations and be able to graph between equations. So I have to do that one first, and then the calculation area after that. I'm David from Electric Teaching, and I hope you're learning things. Have a great day.